Welcome to the Commander Crew, a Magic the Gathering Commander YouTube channel where we ask the question, who's your commander?
We want to thank you for watching our videos. You can help support us by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and hitting the bell notification icon.
You can also go to thecommandercrew.com to check out our t-shirts, masks, pet hoodies, and other Commander Crew goodies.
If you want to buy any of the cards seen in this video, be sure to click our TCG Player affiliate link in the show notes below.
Lastly, you can help us out by heading to our official Patreon page and becoming a direct supporter of the channel. Now let's
get to the video.
Oh no.
What is up, everybody? It is Chris and the Commander Crew coming at you with a Modern Horizons 2 Commander Quick Take. In this episode, we have Zabaz the Glimmerwasp. One generic for a legendary artifact creature is an insect for a 0/0 with modular 1. If a modular trigger ability will put one or more 1/1 counters on a creature you control, that many plus one more are put on it instead. Pay a red, destroy target artifact you control. Pay a white, it gains flying until end of turn. Yes, it's the colorless creature, but because of those two abilities, this is a Boros commander. We now officially have a modular, quote-unquote, tribal commander in Boros. Great colors already. I'm pretty excited for this, especially since it only costs one generic to cast. You can get this out very quickly and efficiently. And modular ability, yes, it's only a triggered ability instead of just the static ability when they enter the battlefield, and it's only when they trigger the modular on the death effect. This is still a pretty awesome card. When I first saw this deck, it reminded me of two decks basically combined together. Hamza, Guardian of Arashin, and Osgir the Reconstructor. Basically, these two decks I've already built together, and my Hamza deck, it's basically a modular deck already, but in green-white, and Osgir is a artifact shenanigans deck. With Zabaz, I want to take the two concepts of these two decks and combine them to a single deck by playing Boros. Now let's go with some of the cards I would put into it and some overall value I'd build for this deck. To start things off, we want to find ways to reduce the cost of our artifacts so we can play as many Arcbound cards as possible. We have Foundry Inspector 3 generic to make artifacts cost 1 less. Joyous Familiar for 4 generic to make historic spells cost 1 less, which is artifacts and legendaries. Semblance Anvil, 3 generic with imprint. When it enters the battlefield, you exile a non-land, and spells you cast that share a type cost 2 less to cast, so this can be artifacts and creatures. And then Ugin the Ineffable, 6 generic for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. Colorless spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. +1, exile the top card and make a 2/2 colorless spirit. And -3 to start target permanent that's 1 or more colors, so a little bit of removal as well. Next up, we have the new modular cards. Modular's been around for a while, but they've added a lot of cool cards to make this format even better. Arcbound Mauser for 1 single white, lifelink cat with mod 1. Arcbound Shikari, 1 in Boros for a first strike. When it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 on each other artifact creature you control. That's pretty awesome enter the battlefield effect with modular 2. Arcbound Tracker, 2 in a red for a menace modular 2. When you cast a spell other than your first spell each turn, put a 1/1 counter on him. And then Arcbound Whelp, 3 in a red for your flying with fire breathing and mod 2. Next up is some modular staples. Arcbound Overseer, 8 generic. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control with modular, and he has mod 6. Arcbound Ravager, 2 generic for sacrifice an artifact to put a 1/1 counter on Arcbound Ravager with mod 1. Arcbound Reclaimer, 4 generic, remove 1/1 counter from it to put a target artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. Great recursion with mod 2. Arcbound Stinger, 2 generic for mod 1 flyer. Arcbound Worker, simple generic 1 for mod 1. And then Scrapyard Combiner with mod 2 for 3 generic, but you can sacrifice an artifact to search your library for a construct card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Next is things that give us overall value by having counters on our creatures. Abzan Battle Priest, 3 generic and a white for a 3/3 human cleric with Outlast for a white. Each creature you control with the 1/1 counter on it has lifelink. Crystalline Crawler for 4 generic Converge. You remove a counter from it to add a mana of any one color, and you can tap it to add a counter to it. This can definitely help out by overall mana ramp, because you can put as many counters as you possibly want in this creature. Hangerback Walker for XX. It into the battlefield with X/1/1 counters, and when it dies, you put a 1/1 colorless stop to creature token for each counter on it. You can pay 1 and tap it to put a 1/1 counter on it. Mindless Automaton, 4 generic. When it enters the battlefield, you put 2 counters on it. Pay 1, discard a card, you put a counter on it, but if you remove 2, you can draw a card. Walking Ballista XX, when it enters the battlefield with X counters, you can pay 4 to put a counter on it, but if you remove a counter from Walking Ballista, it deals 1 damage to any target creature or player. And then Workhorse, 6 generic for it enters the battlefield with 4 counters on it, and you may remove a counter to add a colorless mana of any color, but you may play this only as a mana source. With so many artifacts dying and coming back, we want to make sure we have enough recursion. Junk Diver for 3 generic for a 1/1 flyer. When it dies, return another target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Mirror Retriever, 2 generic. When it dies, return another target artifact graveyard to your hand. Open the Vaults, 4 white, return all artifacts and enchantments from all graveyards to the battlefield under their owner's control. Be careful with this because it will also affect your opponents, so make sure you only use this at the right time. Scrap Troll, 3 generic for a 3/2. When it or another artifact is put in the graveyard from the battlefield, return a target artifact card with lesser mana value to your hand. And then Workshop Assistant for 3 generic for a 1/2. When it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. There are a lot of overall recursions and synergies with these cards because a lot of things are going to be dying, so we can make sure we have a lot of things coming back at the same time. Now we want to make sure we get as many counters as possible on all of our creatures. Cathar's Crusade for 3 white. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Felidar Retreat, 3 and a white with Landfall. When the landfall enters, you choose one of the abilities. You create a 2/2 Cat Beast, or put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and they gain Vigilance until end of turn. Mikaeus the Lunarch, X and a white for a 0. When it enters the battlefield with X counters on it, tap it to put a counter on it, or tap to remove 1 counter to put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control. And then Steel Overseer, 2 generic for a 1/1, where you tap it to put a 1/1 counter on each artifact creature you control. Since we were playing Boros, we have even more options of having even more value. Bronze Guardian for 4 and a white for a Starfire with Double Strike, Ward 2. Other artifacts you control have Ward 2. So basically, if someone wants to target something, they pay 2 additional mana, and Bronze Guardian's power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. So this can be a massive guy. Esper Sentinel, one of the best cards out of the new set. 1 white for a 1/1 Human Soldier. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless they pay X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. And with the amount of counters going around, this is going to become massive. So it's basically a free draw every single time. Goblin Engineer for 1 and a red. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for an artifact card and put it in your graveyard. But you can pay 1 and sacrifice an artifact to return an artifact with CMC with 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Even more awesome recursion. Goblin Welder for 1 red, 1/1. Choose target artifact or player controls an artifact in that graveyard. Then switch the 2. Pretty insane. And then Leonin Bunnis, 3 and a white for 2/5. Artifacts you control have hexproof. In addition, with the overall ward, all our artifacts are going to be nearly impossible to deal with. Lastly, let's add some extra utility. Ashnod's Altar for 3 generic, sacrifice a creature to add 2 colorless mana. Forsaken Monument, 5 generic, colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. And whenever you tap a permanent for colorless, you add an additional. And whenever you cast a colorless spell, gain 2 life. This is going to give us so much value. Krark Clan Ironworks, 4 generic, sacrifice an artifact to add 2 generic mana to your pool. Mystic Forge for 4 generic, you may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may cast it if it's an artifact. And you can pay 1 life to exile the top card of your library to remove the top card. Skull Clan, 1 generic, equipped creature gets +1/-1, and when it dies, you draw 2 cards. Great way of drawing more cards. Sword of Truth and Justice, 3 generic, equipped creature gets +2/+2 with Pro Blue and Pro White. When a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you put a 1/1 counter on a creature you control, and then Proliferate, which lets you up the counters on every single creature you control. And then Throne of Geth for 2 generic, tap it to sacrifice an artifact, and then you Proliferate. This is going to be so many shenanigans with artifacts, it's going to be insane. And that is my Zabaz, the Glimmerwasp's overall quick take deck tech. I am pretty excited for this. I kind of wish it was a Naya build instead of just simply Boros, because I would have definitely thrown in Hamza. But I'm very grateful this is not a monocolor or even a colorless creature, because this definitely will help out this overall. I'm super excited to actually bring modular to its own overall deck and have a primary focus on the modular theme. Now, how would you build this deck? Would you put a lot more emphasis on the modular? Would you put more artifact shenanigans in there? Would you just put a bunch of insects out of the blue? How would you build it? I'd love to know here in the comments down below. Again, my name is Chris from the Commander Guru. Thanks for watching. Peace.